Please remember that nothing we say here should be taken as personal advice. The conversation is for entertainment purposes only. If you have questions about your financial situation, please talk to a licensed financial advisor. All right, welcome to another episode of Future Money, where we talk about the investments of the future
that will make us money.
All right. Well, we got a new setup.
Yeah.
In honor of our recap, this is what we're going to do today.
We just moved our chairs around, guys.
No, it's very, it's a big difference. It's all about how you sell it, Hatem.
What, actually, we're shooting in 4K?
We're shooting in 4K in a brand new studio, which is the same studio with two chairs moving around.
Can you tell the market is up this year?
And a Cybertruck backpack in the background, apparently.
Yeah. You can't find those, huh?
But it's been a good year, obviously, as far as investing goes. Obviously, there's been a lot more challenges in other ways this year, but we wanted to kind of do a recap.
Yeah.
Talk about what happened this year.
I love these year-end recaps because it really allows us to really go through what happened all year and really kind of maybe judge ourselves, see what we got right, what we got wrong.
I think we did a lot of good stuff this year. I mean, again, we're not trying to make predictions on a month-to-month basis of what's going to happen in the market.
Yeah, we got some things right and some things wrong.
We're never wrong. What are you talking about?
Yes, we're not.
Of course. As with investing, if you just want to be right more times than you're wrong.
100%. People don't know this, but Charlie Munger passed away yesterday, unfortunately. Probably one of the most legendary investors in the world. Really amazing. If you got to go and listen to some of the things that he said, but the guy already said what he thought all the time, which is fantastic. But Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger were wrong. Were right 55% of the times. Right. The investing is not easy. Right. So I think getting things less wrong is really important, but you're never going to get everything right. So,
of course.
So that's really the key here.
I always say, if I could predict that stuff, I tell clients this, I go, if I could predict all this stuff, the only person's money I'd be managing is my own.
100%, right?
So let's start the recap. January, right? We start the year. It was a brutal 2022. Yeah. Tech market gets ransacked. All the IPOs from last year. Everything just gets hammered. The markets, the NASDAQ was down 35% last year.
Correct.
S&P was down.
It was grim.
Yeah, S&P was down 25, I think.
20%.
20? Was it 20?
Yeah, almost 20. 19, almost 20, yeah.
20.
But the reality is the sentiment going into last year was really tough, right?
Yeah.
Remember we were talking about hard landing, massive recession, right? So I don't think anybody knew how things will unfold this year. So everyone was really negative and anxious about where things are going. Tech layoffs everywhere. Yep. Interest rates were rising at a clip that we've never seen.
Inflation was still really high.
Yeah, inflation was 9% or so. So there was a lot of really, really tough economic numbers. And so it's hard to believe that we had such a good year this year.
Once again, it goes to this idea that, they always say that investing, the stock market climbs the wall of worry, right?
Right.
It's, in fact, not that this is a rule, but in fact, when everybody is saying something is so bad, when everybody's saying things are so bad, it might lend you to start thinking the other way, which is, things we were telling our clients. Listen, this is the time you buy. This is when you invest your money. This is when you double down. Because historically, we know that markets tend to go up over time.
Yep.
Right?
Markets have a really funny way of making you look stupid. Always, right?
Yeah.
When everyone is thinking the same thing, usually it doesn't work out that way.
Right. Not unlike if we did a recap episode of December 2021, everyone was saying how amazing everything in the planet was and everything's the greatest. And then, of course,
22 happens.
Yeah. So it is a valuable lesson is to, just try to tune out the, the sort of like influx and inundation of media and news out there, and try to invest when things are down.
Yeah, and to quote Charlie Munger, right? It's really it's very important not to become euphoric when everyone else,
Yeah.
right? But also when things are sanguine, when things are tough, that's when you have to be very opportunistic. You have to look at things
for sure
that way.
And that doesn't mean you're going to get it right that year.
Nope.
It might take a year, may take 2 years.
Nope.
So you just have to kind of wait it out and continue to do the things we always say: dollar cost average, buy good investments, etc.
All things that we talk to our clients all the time about.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this year. We
Yeah.
didn't have the recession that everyone was expecting. So soft landing, which means that things are slowing down a little bit, but we're not really going through a massive economic contraction.
A soft landing, I kind of wanted to get to the end of when we talked about this, but the soft landing is incredibly hard to engineer.
Never happened.
My thing is, right, if the Fed is done, like, at what point do we actually say we stuck the soft landing? Is it a year out? Is it 2 years out?
I don't know.
It's like you could just pick some arbitrary number. But I think it's clear that, we're definitely not in the recession that everyone thought we were going to be in last year.
Hard to argue recession when GDP is 5.3%.
5.2%. It's just perfect timing today. GDP numbers come out,
right,
and it's 5.2%. And of course, there's probably going to be a slowdown.
Yeah.
But again, the economy is stronger than ever. But a lot of that is boosted by government spending and stuff like that. Also,
100%.
Yeah.
So, and markets are just being a forward-looking indicator.
Yeah.
Markets are just kind of pricing that in right now, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we had a good year.
For
and
sure.
obviously, things were selling off hard last year, so things were cheap.
Yep.
So let's go through what happened this year. I think in January we started talking about EVs and lithium.
EVs and lithium.
How was that call?
not the best. I think of all the things we talk about in this recap, I think that's the one that we got the most wrong.
Shameless plug here.
Yeah.
You can always go back and listen to some of the episodes from the year.
Yeah.
Whatever podcasts are available. But we had Pedro
becoming
from
a true podcaster now.
Yeah, exactly. Except for the advertisement.
Yeah, no advertisement.
No advertisement.
We will not be paid by anybody.
Nope. We'll do this because we love it. Yeah. We had Pedro from Global X, which is one of the top investment firm. We talked about lithium demand and so forth.
Yeah.
And we obviously bullish on this EV story longer term, but lithium prices collapsed this year.
Yeah.
And
last year too, for that matter. So it's been
So it's been a really, really tough to be investing in lithium and really EVs in general, except for Tesla.
Yeah. Tesla's the only, and you can argue that Tesla's still down, 40% from its high or whatever it is. But yeah, all the EV makers are suffering.
And I think the story there is, we're trying to accelerate this adoption at a pace that is just too fast, right? Tesla is ahead of everyone else by years, but all the other car manufacturers just have not caught up to them.
Yeah.
And nobody's making money in that space. Yep. And frankly, consumers are not ready. We don't have the infrastructure for charging. We don't have the ability to manufacture at scale like Tesla does. So there's a lot of, things. And again, like progress is never in a straight line.
Yeah.
You're gonna have you're gonna see these things happen with any new technology.
Yeah. And not just that. I mean, ultimately, right, we have these massive projections for how many people are going to adopt, but also let's not discount the rising interest rates and how much that has hurt, new car sales and the automotive industry, right? If I'm going to buy a car and I was, borrowing at 3%,
right,
and now I'm borrowing at 9%, 100%. It's going to make that car way less attractive to me. Now all the car companies are price cutting, right, to try to get more demand back, but that just means that they're cutting into their margins, and obviously we've seen that with Tesla's earnings is their earnings are not up year over year in spite of them selling more cars.
They're actually down, you're absolutely right. Like interest rates, they impact everything we do, right?
And that's the solar, right? That's the whole like green energy stuff that we're so bullish on when you look at 10 years from now. Yeah. But they're gonna go through some growing pains as this, and hopefully we're done raising rates, and so that will abate. Yeah.
With that being said, we may have been wrong this year, but I think we're gonna be right long term, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This whole transformation, this clean energy boom is going to happen regardless if it's going to happen next 3 months or next 5 years. But you got to think longer term, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
In February, we had Miriam, who's the chief communications officer at Finn.
Yeah.
She's a friend of GK of Future Money, and we talked about real estate, right? That is a tough place this year, and that we got right.
Well, commercial real estate, absolutely.
Yep.
Residential has, like we talked about with her, and I think last year when we talked to John, right, is we have not seen the
prices,
big hit. Like we've seen some price action move down.
Well, the prices haven't gotten hit on the residential.
Yeah.
But transactions are down.
For sure. Absolutely.
Tremendously.
Yeah.
We're talking 70, 80% down.
Which is crazy. Yeah.
People are just, if you have, I think you have a 2.5% loan. I have a 2.25% loan for my house. I'm not selling my house because any new loan I get is going to be 7, 8%.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's the big problem. And that's why prices haven't gone down.
Right.
But yes, if you're selling real estate, if you're in the real estate transaction business, any
really
of
tough.
it, you're having a tough year comparatively.
Yeah. And hopefully that kind of works itself out. I think eventually people will need to either leave or move or refinance. So demand will come, or supply will come into the market eventually. But the pain is real.
Yeah. When we talked about the record low housing supply added with it, the interest rate shock.
Yeah.
But I think we're starting to get to the point now. Number one, the rates have backed down a little bit this month. There's been a big move. But I think the sort of supply,
you can get loans sub 6% now, which is
that one's tough. It's you got to have all kinds of qualifications for that.
Right.
But hopefully that will help. But the inventory problem is the big problem ultimately. We just need more houses, and it's why we've invested in home builders, right?
That's a big investment theme for us.
And because of this.
100%, and also new household formation. I think last year we had 1.2 million new households, right? People are having families. They just need to,
gotta live somewhere.
Gotta live somewhere, right? But also what we've seen is like the secondary markets, right? The Idahos and the Colorados and, the hot areas after COVID are really seeing some meaningful price drops because people are just want to
don't want to be there. They realize that Boise, Idaho is not as good as Los Angeles or New York or.
I think we may have some fans in Boise. So.
I'm just saying, if you lived in LA and you moved to Boise, the chances are. It's funny because I'm actually doing physical therapy, and my therapist lived in Boise, Idaho, and we actually just had this conversation.
How was it?
He's like, no, he's from Northern California originally, moved to Boise, and now lives in Santa Monica. It's hard to leave the state in spite of its challenges that we have in this state. So Boise, I'm sure Idaho is better in a lot of ways, most likely taxes.
It's really amazing in spite all the BS politics in California. The state is still thriving. It's really thriving despite itself.
Right? It's its own self-sustaining economy, basically. If you live in California, and you add the sunshine on top of that, it's hard to leave. But the taxes do burn for sure.
So that was the housing market, which I think is going to continue to struggle going forward. The commercial real estate is also something that we're watching very, very closely. It is definitely something that a lot of investors are watching
and worried about ultimately because the distressed debt is only starting to come due for commercial loans in 2024 and beyond.
Commercial loans, unlike residential loans, are usually shorter term, 3 to 5 years usually, and they have to be refinanced. And also commercial properties are valued based on the income they generate. So when cost of financing or cost of money goes up, the revenue they generate goes down, right? So there is a lot of repricing that's going to happen or starting to happen, and you can start seeing that in the CDO market or in the commercial debt market, and I think a lot of regional banks will struggle as a result.
Speaking of regional banks, we have March. It seems like an ancient time. It seems like so long ago when it was 8 months ago, 9 months ago. We had a scare that there was going to be financial crisis 2.0. with bank failures.
Silicon Valley Bank.
Silicon Valley Bank, First Republic Bank.
Yeah.
A lot of the regionals, people scared. People like we remember this, right? Clients calling, like, what am I supposed to do with my money? Like, what's saving?
The credit market seized up for a weekend. Basically, the feds had to come in. SVB was the
biggest bankruptcy for a bank.
$200 billion in assets, massive.
Second biggest, I think, after Bear Stearns.
After Bear Stearns, I think. So it was really, really challenging time, and I don't. It's funny you say that. You know, I barely remember it, but when it happened, it was
scary.
First Republic, right? Big competitor to us. Used to be one of the best banks in at least in LA, and
for sure.
Was purchased fire sale by JP Morgan for $10 billion.
Step in. The government's like, here you go.
Jamie Dimon, you know, basically picked it up on the cheap. And it's funny when you look back at things, right? Because we just looked at JP Morgan's earnings. You and I, we just did this. JP Morgan made $2.4 billion last quarter just from the First Republic assets.
It's the once again, when markets are down, buy the dip. Like Jamie Dimon is one of the smartest, savviest investors, great CEO. You know, regardless of how you feel about him personally, like he knows what he's doing.
And also, you know, size, right? You know, too big to fail kind of situation.
I mean, JP Morgan and, you know, Chase is essentially a de facto national bank at this point.
100%.
You know, so it's like, you know, we don't have national banks, quote unquote, like other countries do, but we really do, because JP Morgan is in effect the Fed.
It really is. And, you know, when trouble was brewing, the Fed went to them and they knew they could do it, and they jumped in, and again, they're going to basically make up all the price they paid for it in a 4
year.
quarters. It's kind of crazy.
So that was a scary blip in time. It was a very short-lived, you know, and we had a downturn as a result of it. I think the market sold off like 6 or 7% in a couple weeks, and we started, you know, we kept hearing all these regional banks are going to go under. They're all going to go under. We had Umpqua Bank and you know, all these, and you know, thankfully those were just products of these specific types of banks that took on, you know,
it's funny we talk about this too. I just got a loan for one of my clients through SVB Bank. SVB is actually issuing loans, and it was a very attractive loan. But what happened is First Citizens, which is another regional bank, bought the SVB assets and kept the SVB name.
Why?
And, I think one is relationships. I think two is, I don't know, maybe First Citizen doesn't sound as good.
Here, have a loan from a company that went bankrupt a few months ago.
But it was a fantastic loan.
Do you think people are just hoping the company will go bankrupt and they won't have to pay their loans?
It's a commodity. Nobody gives a shit.
For sure, nobody cares, because the loans will be picked up by somebody. But that's an interesting thought. I mean, as of right now, you know, First Republic still maintains its name under JP Morgan.
100%.
So, so I think I'm curious as to whether Chase ends up changing the First Republic.
Maybe.
You know.
So thank God we got through that scare. Financial crises are never fun. No. But we got through it, and relatively unscathed, right? I think the markets did not.
Once again, like, I mean, the market sold off quickly in the first few days, but like we stabilized. You had the First Republic. You didn't know whether it was going to go under or not go under. It kept kind of going back and forth, and then you know, eventually we found out that it was going under. Still not buying regional banks. I don't think that's a place we want to be. I mean, banks are just troubled in general. Like, I mean, if you're not buying JP Morgan, like, I struggle to find a bank that's been a good investment.
I mean, philosophically, we just don't like banks.
We don't like banks in general. Regardless of their earning potential. Just the way they, you know, treat people as a whole.
100%. In April, we talked a little bit about geopolitics. We had John Emerson, ex-U.S. ambassador to Germany under the Obama administration. Illuminating conversation regarding the Ukraine war.
Little did we know geopolitics would get way worse over the course of the year.
But times are always tough, right? So there's always that war is still brewing. There's more troubles in the Middle East, unfortunately, but markets, as you said, climb walls of worry. So
because the geopolitical tensions. If you think about geopolitics in general, like since the dawn of time, but even in modern period, like when has there been a period where there wasn't geopolitical tension? Ever.
I think someone said like in all of history, there's only like 60 years where there was no wars globally.
And I don't honestly know where that comes from ultimately, because I feel like there's always a war somewhere. But like even just using the U.S. as an example, right? Like, when was there a time where there was not a geopolitical tension between the U.S. and some other power?
Yeah, I mean,
it's always that way.
I think the only thing is we're lucky it's never here. Right.
Yeah, but there is it's never on our soil other than the 9/11, right? Like that was the one scenario. But it's like, when has there been a period of time where the U.S. was not at odds with somebody, or other places that we won't even get to other places in the world? But it's always the case. There's an initial sort of reaction a lot of times, but then you just have to sort of just play the long game,
right? And again, I don't think anybody knows where things are going to go, right? So you have to have that humility of understanding that anytime all kinds of stuff can happen, especially geopolitically, right? So you can't really invest based on that.
For sure. I mean, has the U.S. had trouble with Russia in the past?
A little bit.
Oh, I think it goes back to not even just like World War I. Even
I just watched Oppenheimer this weekend.
Oh, I want to see it. I still haven't seen it. Actually, I got to watch it in like 3 phases though.
It's 3.5 hours long.
So long.
It's so good though. It's such an interesting time. Such an interesting time.
And imagine, I always tell people, like, everyone always feels like we're in the worst. Like, I feel like people always feel like they're in the worst times than what time. We always have this nostalgia that things were better. It's funny, I just listened to this history podcast about golden ages, quote unquote. And you never know you're in a golden age until the age afterwards where things are crappy, and then you're like, well, that was a golden age. And honestly, they went through all these decades and all these countries throughout time, and nobody could really agree on a golden age that actually legitimately existed. And the only period of time that people could think of was like the 1990s. Like things were decent and good. And the biggest problem we had was the Clinton impeachment, and not that wasn't huge, but like, there's always stuff going on. You just got to focus on the positive and kind of move on.
Nothing like the present, my friends.
Yeah.
And then going into the summer, ChatGPT kind of started really taking off, and we had the AI craze. Really,
the AI. I will say, I was wrong on this one. Hatem was right. I kind of made fun of Hatem at the end of last year, beginning of this year, because he was a rah AI guy, and I was a little bit more skeptical at first. But so I'm gonna admit here that you were right.
Thank you, Ayal.
And I was wrong.
Thank you.
But the good news is I still believe in Nvidia as a whole, and is bought a lot of the stock from clients and stuff. So.
If you've been living under a rock, Nvidia is basically the picks and shovels for AI. They make the chips, and we've seen basically this year probably one of the most amazing earnings story I've ever seen in investment.
For sure.
Nvidia is a company that was doing $5 billion a year in revenue 3 years ago. Did on Q2, looking at Q2 of this year, they did $7 billion, right? And they guided for $11 billion the following quarter.
This one that just reported, which ended up being $13
billion, and they guided for $20 billion for this current quarter. So this company is basically, it's a massive company already that is doubling its revenue almost from quarter to over quarter at almost 78% margins.
That's crazy. And my fear about those margins is they're unsustainable.
It's really tough to continue this pace.
Now granted, they're so what they're gonna continue to do well, and but who knows what the margins look like in the future. But Nvidia is clearly the winner in this scenario. But AI, right?
Yep.
Microsoft, we just had the Sam Altman from OpenAI saga leaving,
show,
coming back. I like it's like a courtroom drama. Honestly, it's like I felt like
where's the novella,
dude, for sure. I'm sure like HBO is already working on a script.
100%. You know what's funny? You know who was on the board of OpenAI? Levitt Gordon's wife, who is
who? Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
Yeah, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's wife.
Okay.
He played on the series. He played Travis Kalanick.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Super pumped.
Pumped. So he played Travis Kalanick. His wife is on the board.
Uber,
His wife was on the board of OpenAI. Go figure.
The board is interesting. So the AI craze happens, and we start to see like the actual earnings. And if we fast forward to this quarter, the earnings, this was the most insane. If you guys remember, I texted you the sort of, I circled it on the earnings report. The earnings for NVIDIA this quarter over last year, year over year growth, was up 1,274%.
Yeah. It's just,
I've never, and this is, you're not talking about going from like, 1 cent. To 50 cents. You know what I mean? You're talking about growing like meaningful numbers.
Yeah. And crazy. This stock is up 250% this year, by the way. So, and I think what's missed in this story is Jensen Huang, which is the CEO of NVIDIA, started the company in the 90s as a GPU, basically for gaming. And it's really like a success story that's 30 years in the making.
For sure.
You know what I mean? And it's really important to, and I think everyone talks about Elon Musk and Tim Cook and all these other CEOs, but Jensen is probably one of the most important CEOs in right now.
Absolutely. And he's the most important guy whose name you probably never heard of if you're not,
100%.
If you're not investing in NVIDIA.
Very humble guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to be in the news. When he speaks, he measures his words like grown-ups.
Absolute genius. Absolute great operator of the business, and is somebody who truly like understands and like sees the future ultimately, and doesn't mix words like you said, and just loves what he does. I listen to his, we listen to his interviews, and this is a guy who is sort of consumed by this idea, not in a unhealthy way, but he works all the time.
Yeah, and I think the reason why NVIDIA is such an important story for us is because this creates a new technological cycle, right? Like we've seen it with the cloud, we've seen it with the internet. We've seen it with the electricity. Like, this is that massive.
This is what they're saying, right? Who was it? Was it Larry Ellison that said
it's like electricity, right?
Electricity is the only analogous sort of change to AI right now.
I see this. And right now, NVIDIA is the only company that's making money, plus Microsoft and a couple others. But I think ultimately what's going to be built in the next 5-10 years on top of this is just going to be. And listen, there is always fears and blah, 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 and things that we have to.
Rightly so. There should be. There should be,
but ultimately I think it's a net positive for society.
For sure. I agree.
So that was beginning of the summer, and then Apple unveiled is Vision Pro.
Vision Pro.
Yeah.
The first exciting thing Apple has unveiled since the iPhone.
Yeah. Spatial computing. I think it's a new model, new ways of us interacting with computers. Yeah. And I think when you partner this up with AI, I think the opportunities are going to be massive. And we will have Evan Helda next month, who's the head of spatial computing at AWS, who will talk about this stuff. So I'm really excited about having him on.
Totally excited about that.
Yeah.
Spatial computing, hopefully this is the next gen, right? This is, we've been talking about VR, AR for years.
Yep.
I feel like people have been talking about VR my entire life.
Yeah.
And so this
Have you watched the show Peripheral yet?
No.
You have to.
I started watching the other one that you told me.
How is
which
good?
is
Chemistry?
Dude, it was
Lesson in
really
chemistry?
good. And then, like, spoiler alert, like something crazy happens. And I was like, man, this show just got real depressing real fast.
I know, right?
That episode was rough.
It's a rough one. No, it gets better.
Yeah,
It gets better.
I gotta
It's a
get
good
through
show, though,
it.
right?
It's a very good show.
Yeah.
You know, Brie Larson.
Yeah.
Brie Larson. You know, we know her as Captain Marvel, really, but,
Totally, yeah.
but she's actually really good in the show.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Really amazing show. Again, Apple.
Oh, right, services and all that jazz. And apparently today, Apple just said that they're breaking ties with Goldman Sachs for their credit card now.
But we knew that's going to happen. Yeah,
but we didn't know it was going to happen this early.
Yeah.
Their partnership went through 2029, so I wonder if they already have somebody else. I mean,
I'm sure.
Talk of American
Guess
Express
what?
taking it
JP
up.
Morgan?
Possibly, yeah, for sure, yeah.
I think American Express is probably coming in. Yeah.
So, you know, the Vision Pro, it looks really cool. You know, the question is are we going to be able to get it?
Yeah.
It's very expensive.
It's going to be really tough to get.
Yeah.
It's also going to be really interesting to see how they, and this is something I want to talk to Evan about, how they're going to roll it out, right? Because you have to go to a store, get it fitted.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to be like a traditional product for Apple. But again, I think watch the show Peripheral. You know, Hollywood has a really good way of kind of setting what the future is going to look like, and the Peripheral is on Amazon Prime.
Oh, is it a dystopian future?
Yeah,
about,
it's pretty. I mean, it's really well done. Production
there's no like future movies that show like the future being good. It's always dystopian.
I mean, I'm not gonna spoil it for you. There is some good stuff.
Okay, good. All right. But I'm sure it's dystopian.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So Vision Pro. And then, you know, at the end of, we were July, right?
Yeah.
And then at the end of July, we had the official end to the bear market that we had experienced, which was nice.
Yeah.
Long Live the Bull, I think, was the name of our next episode.
Yeah.
And sure enough, in true form, in true fashion, we immediately had a correction in the market of 10%.
Yeah. Like literally the minute we did that show.
It was like that day forward for the next 2.5 months.
So correction is usually a pullback, which about 10% from the top.
Yeah.
Right. So, and you know, people.
They happen every year.
Happens almost every year, right? You have at least twice a year you get a 5% pullback. Once a year about 10% pullback, right? It's just part of the how the market works, you know. But if you freaked out, then you know it's you know you missed out on a nice move
and why was it, you know, seasonality of markets? A lot of times that summer is, you know, slower months, less volume. There tends to be more sales, but I think the main culprit, right, was rates had risen really, really fast during that time. There was a fear that you know, inflation was still hotter than expected, and the rates went super high, and then they peaked at, you know. At like 5%,
right? And that was it. Really, I think the common thread throughout all year is really rates, right?
Rates have been the thing.
From real estate to tech stocks to, you know, really anything that affected the markets this year had something to do with inflation, rates, and what the Fed was doing, right?
If you sort of take out NVIDIA and AI chips for a second, if you look at the charts of the stock market and, you know, the 10-year Treasury bond, they're inversely linked, but they're almost directly correlated and inversely correlated. Rates go up, markets go down.
Vice versa. Exactly. Exactly. And this is why it's important that you can look at the macros in general, right? And then obviously summer, you know, we had that correction. Things were not that great in the markets. And then obviously we had the writer and actor strike in Hollywood.
Which we single-handedly solved.
I think so. You're welcome. You're welcome.
That was a fun show. We talked about the writer strike, and obviously it affected a lot of people.
We had the wrap on. We talked a little bit with some of the experts. Obviously being in Santa Monica, we work with a lot of people in the entertainment business. And frankly, you know, everyone is grateful the strike is solved, because the economic impact is $5 billion plus, according to many people. But ultimately, I don't know how much
came out of it.
Exactly. I don't know how much.
I think the big thing is, you know, is the AI stuff. I think the least, you know,
does it really mean anything?
Well, I want to say it's partly as a moral victory, but I do think like having something in writing that your name, image and likeness cannot be used to generate, like if I make a deep fake or I make a user generated, I don't know, something. Iron Man, right? Like Marvel and or Robert Downey Jr. for playing Iron Man should still be credited with that stuff. I can't just like generate content that's, even though you can argue it's not their content.
I mean, there is, listen, IP rules around that already. You know, it's just like I think that, again, the technology is moving way faster than the regulation always is.
Yeah,
and we just need, frankly, I think we just need smarter, younger people in our government to help regulate these things, you know?
You don't think the people we have right now are young enough? If you're like, it's bad when you're like the 68-year-old is the young person.
Yeah, we just need fresh thinking.
It's no offense to 68-year-olds in any capacity. But you know, we do need some younger blood in our government.
Yeah, when everyone in Congress doesn't get this new changes, you know, it's really,
it is interesting. There was an interview that Pivot podcast did with Obama on AI recently. And you know, whatever your politics and whatever you feel about Obama, the president, I think shouldn't matter. It's a good. I have mixed feelings.
To that. He
was really good. Like he is very intelligent, and it was a really good interview ultimately. And I think having somebody who actually understands some of what's going on in politics, it was kind of a breath of fresh air. Again, I have mixed feelings about him in general, but that's not the point. I can listen to somebody who
And I think, listen, the genie is out of the bottle, right? For AI, we're not going to put AI back.
No, you can't.
You can't. And having thoughtful conversation around it is really the only way we can solve it.
For sure.
So hopefully that's where we are. But talking about going back to the actor strike, the biggest winner, Netflix. Right?
Whoa, who saw that coming?
Who saw that coming, right?
We knew that Netflix would win because they needed to cut down on as they all did, to cut down on content spend. Netflix had a lot of shows already there.
Netflix had an incredible quarter. I mean, they added 8 million subscribers.
It was the best since the pandemic quarter, right?
Since the pandemic. So they have the combo of 8 million new subscribers, reduce costs, and increase prices because they have pricing power, right? Like
1, 2, 3, that's
boom,
good. That's all good for them.
So it's you know, champagne for Netflix, right?
Netflix wins as usual. Netflix is playing chess and everybody else playing checkers.
100%. And you know, also the fact that they have a lot of foreign production.
Correct.
You know,
that didn't affect.
There's always good stuff on Netflix. So big winners.
The content password sharing thing has definitely changed things for Netflix. I think I mentioned that 2 of my ex partners were still on my thing that I didn't even realize.
I'm sure they signed up for their own.
They had to now. They got kicked off. I was like, wait, you're still on this?
Yep. October was awful in many ways. We saw the awful events that happened in the Middle East, you know, and escalation, you know, more geopolitical stuff, Europe, Middle East, you know, and really just tough emotional
bad month, overall, obviously specifically for me. It was really hard. And on the backdrop, you had the threat of rising oil prices.
Right.
You had rising interest rates continue.
Right.
And then when that happened, we started to see rates back off a little bit. As people were sort of worried on the geopolitical scale again.
And we're recording this on November 29th. We're basically ending November as the best month.
So that's what happens right at the end. Things get bad. Things look bad. You know, rates get to 5% in October. And that's the high water mark for the 10-year Treasury bond is 5%. We're now today at 4.3.
Yeah, wow.
And just to get you guys to understand, like, the bond market is not supposed to move like this in general.
It's 20% move basically, and
so it was a huge move in yields to the downside, which again is always a positive for the stock market.
Right.
Then November comes, right? It's the best month, like you said, since June of 2022, which really was. It's kind of to say that is misleading because we were in a heavy bear market last year, so we had an up month within a bear market, which happens all the time within bear markets. But we ultimately didn't even hit the low at that point. So this is really kind of harkening back on the world index, going back to June of 2020.
And also, I think what we talked about is all year. The Magnificent Seven. We even did a show about that.
We did the Elite Eight. Don't forget Netflix, man.
Netflix.
We have our own. We have to take that.
And really drove the whole market. There is something called the equal weighted indexes. So if you basically most indexes are weighted by market cap. The equal weight index, so if you weighted all the companies the same, it's basically flat this year.
We're up now. I think it's like 4% or something. But it's crazy to think that, and the small cap index, smaller companies are barely up this year also.
So hopefully, when you think about where things are going, hopefully we see the rest of the market catching up. Right now, maybe Microsoft and Netflix and Tesla and all Nvidia, maybe we'll take a breather, and the rest of the market will basically carry us out. So
and I think what we saw in November also, again, rates coming down, the fear that the geopolitical tensions were not going to spread further, and earnings coming in better than people expected, right? So this is also a big key to the markets is. Whatever the expectation are, you just have to be better than that. And the expectations could be that's what the beginning of this year was about. Things were less bad than people thought, and now things are better than people thought. And so the market rallies because earnings actually came in.
What you just said, it's such an important thing in investing that a lot of people don't get, right? Like, everyone kind of knows what's going to happen, right? Or at least for these expectation that's kind of priced in. Things have to be better than that. And that's really something that we are looking for all the time.
So hopefully companies seem to be profitable. Again, AI and profitability is probably going to really help. Maybe not on the short term, but over the next few years, right? Because short term companies are going to have to spend, right? We heard we heard Microsoft and Google and Amazon all say this stuff. I'm excited to hear about Amazon with our guest next month. And I listened to something about Amazon AWS Q, which is like a AI thing that they were talking about yesterday. That I do think people are sort of discounting Amazon and AI.
Amazon launched their kind of ChatGPT thing today to compete with OpenAI and Microsoft. So again, I'm excited because this is a new cycle and there's a lot of great things that are going to happen.
And think of all the dystopian future movies that are going to come out now that AI is a thing. There's so many. I still always think about The Matrix as kind of my go-to AI dystopian future thing. It's still a great movie. It still holds up, by the way, if you watch it today. But this, like you said, life imitates art, imitates life, and so we're gonna get a lot of content.
100%. It's exciting. So I think we got a lot more right than wrong.
For sure. This year, at least.
This year.
No, it's been a good year overall. Again, there's been challenges. There always will be, and I do think this is why we tend to look at the long view. We like technology in spite of sometimes technology pulls back like last year. It's always good to look at the long term. It's always good to look at what are these companies actually doing. Markets, stocks. They're not just numbers on a page. Okay, these are real businesses, real companies that are making real money. So,
but I think also it's important to we'll close with this is to remember Charlie Munger and really times you gotta be an even keel. You gotta stay calm when things are really tough and really be opportunistic because long term that's how you're gonna look also long term. And these guys invested even in their 90s. They looked at the next 15, 20 years.
Their time horizon is forever. And that's theoretically, if you have a good investment, your holding period should theoretically be forever. That's the hope, unless something changes, obviously, and not that you will hold something forever, but this is the way to look at things. And so
we're challenging that here at GK. So hopefully we get those results.
So it's been a good year for markets. We hope for some resolutions on other stuff and things get better in the world. And this is mostly we got one more episode this year.
Well, that's it.
And then that's it.
That's a wrap.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.